So, speaking of, anybody I think who has any objective sense of anything, that's another President Obama and the Obama administration's response to Wall Street's destruction of the global economy is a major mark against him. Now, again, we got to make some basic distinctions here. The stimulus was too small. It might have been the only feasible thing that could have passed, and it undoubtedly was essential in averting a catastrophe. Banks did need to be recapitalized in some form, but it didn't need to be entirely accountability-free. It creates major moral and legal hazard that none of these people went to jail. And the Obama administration's response to the housing crisis was piddling. And there was enormous political opportunity, if you had even sort of basic populist instincts, to at least make an attempt to seriously recalibrate the relationship between the financialization of the economy and the rest of the United States and indeed the global economy. That's not the position they went with. And indeed, a guy like Tim Geithner, still saw financial instruments as a core comparative advantage of the American economy. They didn't go in that direction. But this clip from 2010, it's a town hall on CNBC. It's with John Harwood and then President Barack Obama, is illustrative in a couple of ways. One, because we get to see an appearance of fucking Anthony Scaramucci, but also because even as the Obama administration is handling Wall Street with the most gentle, satin-laced kid gloves imaginable in a time of skyrocketing inequality, massive corruption, and massive misaligned reward systems, this is Anthony Scaramucci having a restrained mini tantrum at the president for really what Obama's sort of basically gentle verbal criticisms of Wall Street and very modest reform package. I don't know if he mentions Dodd-Frank, but I'm sure that would also be in the litany of complaints. But Wall Street was so insane and in such a demented bunker mentality that even as they were getting away with melting down the global economy with no serious criminal fiscal punishments for almost any of them, and not even a radical new regulatory structure or breakups, this is how they felt about how under siege they were. Anthony Scaramucci gives voice to it. This is how insane it is and was.
And I also went to law school with you with Brian Mathis.
It's great to see you.
Back in the day.
You've done very well. Congratulations. That's great.
And if I fouled you on the hoop court, it wasn't intentional.
I remember that.
You would remember if I fouled you. I got a low center of gravity. The question I have, sir, and this is something I really, a lot of my friends are thinking about. Listen, I represent the Wall Street community. Right. We have felt like a piñata. Maybe you don't feel like you're whacking us with a stick, but we certainly feel like we've been whacked with a stick. So I certainly think that Main Street and Wall Street are connected. And if we're going to heal the society and make the economy better, how are we going to work towards that, healing Wall Street and Main Street? Question number one. Mm-hmm. And then question number two has to do with job growth. I was doing a calculation. I run Skybridge Capital. It's got $7.4 billion under management. And I'm thinking about hiring new people. Mm-hmm. A $50,000 worker in New York City, mm-hmm. if I want to pay the full freight on the health care, right, plus the FICA and all the other stuff, it's about $90,000, sir. Mm-hmm. That woman, man or woman, is going to take home about $35,000. It seems very, very disconnected, and I think that's one of the main reasons why we don't have a lot of job growth. So, two questions. When are we going to stop wagging at the Wall Street piñata? And how are we going to fix that arbitrage so that we can create jobs in our society?
Right. Well, on the first issue.
And I promise not to foul you if we play hoops again.
On the first question, I think it'd be useful to go back and look at the speeches that I've made, including a speech, by the way, I made back in 2007 on Wall Street, before Lehman's had gone under, in which I warned about a potential crisis if we didn't start reforming practices on Wall Street. At the time, I said exactly what you said, which is Wall Street and Main Street are connected. We need a vibrant, vital financial sector that is investing in businesses, investing in jobs, investing in our people, providing consumers loans so they can buy products. All that's very important, and we want that to thrive. But we've got to do so in a responsible way. Now, I have been amused over the last couple of years, this sense of somehow me beating up on Wall Street. I think most folks on Main Street feel like they got beat up on. Yeah. And they...
So it's so fascinating there because basically it also shows why, again, the sort of fanatical, and I actually think it's interesting, there is a kind of religious mania of Wall Street and greed. And there's the terminology of cognitive capture is relevant there as well in terms of it isn't just, it's obviously mainly financial self-interest, but there's also obviously deep buy-in to deeply delusional belief systems. President Obama's moderate outreach and telling them in a meeting when he had the main Wall Street CEOs in the White House saying, I'm the one standing in between you and the pitchforks, when it was the opportunity to say, I'm the one leading the pitchforks. Or, how at the very least, I'm not going to stop them without some serious reforms and some serious redistribution. He is still getting the response, when are you going to stop moderate criticism of us? And then incidentally, the second part of the question, which is, can you get rid of basic standards for providing things like health insurance or overtime to potentially hiring a personal assistant or a bookkeeper at my firm that he's just bragging about the billions in assets that they handle. But paying a FICA and health insurance is somehow just too much. It's less than a rounding error. And that exchange really, 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 I think, demonstrates, and I think it also demonstrates again why, this notion that, well, how is Wall Street doing? Or even the notion that, some people actually still held on to after 2008, that Wall Street was some type of engine of, at the very least, even if it was greedy, some type of serious, prescient economic self-interest is insane. They don't care. And, and that's, by the way, a same critique that must apply to the whole Mike Bloomberg, Joe Scarborough lane, because we're going to see another resurgence, especially if Democrats nominate, certainly Bernie Sanders, if they nominate Elizabeth Warren, if they nominate any actual progressive, or if they nominate someone from the center who has adopted a robust progressive policy agenda, say Kamala Harris makes that shift, and there's, God forbid, there's not only gentle criticism of Wall Street, maybe all of a sudden we realize that the entire economy shouldn't be designed to give things to Anthony Scaramucci and Mike Bloomberg. The shrieking and whining and meltdown, emotional and otherwise, in the financial sector is going to turn into a drumbeat for yet more no labels garbage. And that more no labels garbage is going to be some version of, hey, Trump is a big jerk, even though if I'm Joe Scarborough, I've, until quite recently, been one of his main helpers and conduits in media. Or if I'm, or it's going to be Mike Bloomberg, whose policy agenda is of absolutely no interest to over 90% of the country. But there's going to be a massive amount of money dumped into that. Trump's a jerk, vague comments about the environment and social justice, and yet more pushes for capital gains tax cuts, deregulation, and giving the financial and now the tech sector anything they want. And that's how delusional that mindset is. So, and another great connection too that, Anthony Scaramucci is a buffoon. He's going to be terrible at this job. He's going to say all sorts of sexist, nonsensical, and cult-like things in his service of Trump. And that's a very successful Harvard Law Wall Street guy. Like, that's who we're talking about. Just be mindful when you think, like, oh, because somebody went to a certain school or they have a certain credential, or they have a certain amount of money. They are also careerist fucking moron sociopaths, just like this guy.
Well, it also shows you the type of circles Obama has always been swimming around in. He's
Yep.
playing basketball against guys like that, and that's just a normal sort of conservative in the Obama circles.
Exactly. And that's the type of guy that, and I've met, we've all met people like this, like they come to you at a party, hey, you know what? And it's as if it's some great revelation, like, hey, you know what? I don't have any problem. Look, you're worried. I have gay friends. They can marry each other. I just want to not pay my secretary sick time. I just want to make sure the guy that cleans my floor doesn't have health insurance. I just want to make sure that I don't have to pay any taxes to ensure that we have roads or hospitals or bridges. You can understand that. I don't. I think it's just as absolutely morally grotesque and repugnant. I remember a couple years ago, being on a HuffPost panel, and this woman who I was actually friendly with, very nice person, whatever, but she went into this whole spiel about how Republicans should split up between the crazy social conservatives and the people who just care about fiscal discipline. And I was like, I think it is just as disgusting to actively work to make sure that people don't have health insurance and that people starve to death and that people quite literally die on the street. I think that that's just as disgusting as opposing rights for transgender people. I think it's all disgusting. What were you going to say?
You didn't make the point I was expecting you to make, so I kind of I forgot the point I was going to make.
Okay, fair enough. But I just think that it's, and you're right. I mean, Scaramucci would be like the whole, well, let's just, it's our business guy.
Oh yeah, and Obama hanging around, like a young Obama hanging around people like that, probably thinks he's really far left, thinking that maybe we should have some basic regulations on this sort of thing.
Well, that's why you got to, I think it was Simon Johnson who wrote a book. I think it was 12 Bankers, I want to say.
13 Bankers, I think.
13 Bankers, and I think is it Baseline Scenario? I don't know. I'm less familiar with him now. He isn't. I feel like he's not been as much on the scene recently, but he wrote about something called cognitive capture. And it was the cultural corollary, of course, the reason that Congress has deregulated Wall Street and let them get away with so much is obviously because of campaign contributions and how money dominates the process. But you also had a lot of people who were trained in specific ways, including, there's the kind of track of, there's the pared down, dumb version that you see more in the Republican Party, which is, hey, if you did well, that's because God likes you. And then there's the technocratic, I studied with some, choice theory economist at Harvard, and it's complicated and blah, 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 equation. And that's why actually maybe regulating sprinkler systems might not make sense. There's the technical bullshit version of that stuff. And I think, but a lot of people are trained in this. And, it's like that Tony Blair line where he told his party one time, he said, it's even worse. I actually believe this stuff. And I think that, we're in the process right now, not just of a major, opening of the genuine class conflicts that need to happen in this country, but also hopefully popping some oxygen out of these totally discredited and dangerous ideas.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos